Right now, someone thinks you're an idiot. They're watching you, studying your every move, convinced they've figured you out. They see your quiet demeanor, your hesitant responses, your tendency to ask questions instead of giving answers. And they think they've won. They think they're superior. They think you're no threat at all. What they don't realize is that you're 3 moves ahead. If you clicked on this video, you're already different. You understand something most people miss entirely. That in a world obsessed with proving intelligence, the smartest move might be to appear stupid. You know it's not about what they think. It's about mastering the art of appearing foolish while abandoning the stupidity of showing all your cards too early. The silent observer. There's a moment that changes everything. It's that split second when someone calls you slow, dismisses your ideas, or talks down to you like you're a child. Most people feel their blood boil. Most people feel the desperate urge to prove themselves, to show their credentials, to demonstrate their worth. But you do something different. You watch. You listen. You let them reveal themselves. This isn't weakness. This is warfare. Psychological warfare so subtle that your opponents don't even know they're fighting a battle they've already lost. Machiavelli lived in Renaissance Italy, a world where one wrong word could end your life, where power shifted like sand, and where the difference between survival and destruction was measured in the ability to read people's souls. He understood something that cuts through centuries of human behavior. Intelligence displayed is intelligence diminished. When you show your hand too early, you give away your greatest weapon. Surprise. When you let others underestimate you, you gain something infinitely more valuable than respect. Access to their true thoughts. But here's what will shock you about this strategy. It's not just about fooling others. It's about discovering who you really are when no one's watching. It's about finding strength in silence that most people will never experience. The psychology of underestimation. Think about the last time someone treated you like you didn't matter. Remember that feeling? That sting of being overlooked, dismissed, treated as invisible? Most people run from that feeling. They build walls of ego to protect themselves from ever experiencing it again. But what if I told you that feeling is actually a superpower in disguise? When someone underestimates you, they do something beautiful. They drop their mask. They reveal their true character. They show you their strategies, their weaknesses, their blind spots. They become careless with their words, reckless with their plans. Machiavelli called this the gift of invisibility. When you're not seen as a threat, you become the ultimate observer. You sit in rooms where secrets are shared. You hear conversations meant for safe ears. You watch the puppet strings that others never notice. The Roman Emperor Claudius mastered this art. History remembers him as the stammering fool who everyone ignored, until he was the only one left alive when the dust settled. While his ambitious relatives were busy plotting against each other, Claudius was studying the game. When they eliminated each other, he simply stepped forward and claimed the throne. The last one standing is rarely the loudest one in the room, but this strategy comes with a price that most people can't pay. Are you ready to hear what it really costs to hold this kind of power? Because once you understand the sacrifice, you'll never look at social interactions the same way. The price of invisible power. The hardest part isn't pretending to be stupid. The hardest part is letting others believe they're smarter than you. It's sitting in meetings where people explain things you mastered years ago. It's watching colleagues take credit for ideas you planted in their minds. It's enduring the condescending smiles of people who wouldn't last 5 minutes in your mental arena. This is where most people break. Their ego can't handle it. They need the validation, the recognition, the applause. They need others to know how brilliant they are. But Machiavelli understood that ego is the enemy of power. Every time you correct someone who's wrong, you reveal your knowledge. Every time you showcase your intelligence, you paint a target on your back. Every time you need to be seen as smart, you become predictable. The truly powerful don't need acknowledgement. They don't need to win arguments. They don't need to be right in public. They're playing a different game entirely. A game where the scoreboard is invisible and the victory is measured in decades, not moments. This requires a level of emotional maturity that most people never develop. You have to become comfortable with being misunderstood. You have to find validation from within rather than from others. You have to build your self-worth on something deeper than public recognition. And here's where this gets dangerous. Because once you master this level of self-control, you realize something about human nature that changes everything. You see a pattern in how people behave when they think they're superior, and it's darker than you might expect. The dark psychology of superiority. When people believe they're smarter than you, they become drunk on their own perceived superiority. They start to reveal things they would never share with someone they respected. They become careless with sensitive information. They make assumptions that expose their strategies. But here's the disturbing truth. They also become cruel. They mock what they don't understand. They dismiss ideas without consideration. They treat you as less than human because they believe you're less than intelligent. This is where the psychology gets dark. When you pretend to be stupid, you don't just learn about strategy and power. You learn about the true nature of the people around you. You see who they really are when they think there are no consequences. Some people will surprise you with their kindness. They'll treat you with respect, regardless of your perceived intelligence. These are the people worth knowing, worth trusting, worth keeping close. But others will reveal something ugly. They'll show you that their kindness was conditional, that their respect was earned through fear, that their character was as thin as paper. Machiavelli wrote about this extensively, how power reveals character. But perceived power over others reveals even more. When someone thinks they have power over you, they show you their soul. And sometimes that soul is darker than you imagined. This brings us to the most crucial part of this strategy. The moment when you decide to reveal yourself. Because timing this reveal wrong can destroy everything you've built. But timing it right? That's when you become unstoppable, the art of the reveal. The moment of revelation is everything. It's the difference between a magic trick and actual magic. It's the moment when the underestimated fool becomes the recognized master, when the silent observer becomes the acknowledged strategist. But this moment can't be forced. It can't be rushed. It has to unfold naturally, like a flower blooming in spring. You have to wait for the perfect convergence of circumstances, preparation, and opportunity. Sometimes this moment comes in a boardroom when you finally speak up with a solution that solves everyone's problems. Sometimes it comes in a crisis when your quiet preparation becomes the foundation for everyone's survival. Sometimes it comes in a conversation when your carefully asked questions reveal that you've been orchestrating the entire discussion. The key is that when you reveal yourself, you do it with such precision and timing that people don't just recognize your intelligence, they recognize your wisdom. They don't just see that you're smart, they see that you've been playing chess while they were playing checkers. This is different from the typical gotcha moment. This isn't about embarrassing others or proving them wrong. This is about revealing value so undeniable that even those who underestimated you have to acknowledge it. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple, he didn't announce he was a genius. He simply started releasing products that spoke for themselves. When Warren Buffett makes investment decisions, he doesn't explain his brilliance. He lets his results do the talking. But here's what nobody talks about. What happens to you internally when you live this way? How does carrying this kind of secret power change your relationship with yourself? The answer might surprise you. The internal transformation. Living as the underestimated genius changes you in ways that go far beyond strategy. It transforms your relationship with yourself, with others, and with the very concept of power itself. First, you develop an unshakable inner confidence. When your self-worth isn't dependent on others' recognition, you become psychologically invincible. You stop needing external validation because you know your own value. You stop being affected by criticism because you understand that most criticism comes from people who don't understand the game you're playing. Second, you develop patience at a level that most people can't comprehend. You learn to think in years and decades rather than days and weeks. You understand that true power is built slowly, carefully, with precision that can't be rushed. Third, you develop a kind of emotional intelligence that borders on telepathy. When you spend years watching people's unguarded moments, you learn to read micro-expressions, to understand motivations, to predict behaviors with startling accuracy. But perhaps, most importantly, you develop wisdom. Not just intelligence, not just cunning, but actual wisdom. You understand that power without wisdom is destructive, that intelligence without character is dangerous, that success without substance is hollow. You begin to see the world differently. You understand that most conflicts are unnecessary, that most drama is performance, that most noise is just noise. You learn to distinguish between what matters and what doesn't, between who's worth your time and who isn't. And this transformation leads to something that Machiavelli called the ultimate power, the ability to shape reality itself. Not through force, not through manipulation, but through something far more subtle and far more powerful. Shaping reality through silence. When you master the art of strategic silence, you don't just observe the game, you begin to influence it in ways that are almost magical. You plant seeds of ideas in conversations. You ask questions that guide people toward insights. You create space for others to discover solutions that you've already seen. This is influence without fingerprints. This is leadership without titles. This is power that can't be taken away because it was never formally given. Think about the people who have shaped your thinking the most. Often they weren't the loudest voices in the room. They were the ones who asked the right questions at the right time. They were the ones who listened more than they spoke. They were the ones who helped you discover your own answers rather than forcing their answers on you. This is the ultimate evolution of Machiavellian strategy. You move beyond just protecting yourself or gaining advantage. You begin to shape the environment around you. You influence outcomes without anyone realizing you're doing it. You don't write the story, but you influence the plot. This level of influence is sustainable because it's based on value rather than force. People follow your lead because they want to, not because they have to. They implement your ideas because they believe in them, not because you've manipulated them. And this brings us to the final lesson, the one that ties everything together. Because the art of pretending to be stupid isn't really about deception at all. It's about something far more profound, and far more transformative. The ultimate truth. Here's the secret that Machiavelli understood but never said directly. The art of pretending to be stupid is actually the art of becoming wise. It's not about deception. It's about discipline. It's not about manipulation. It's about mastery. It's not about hiding your intelligence. It's about transcending your ego. When you learn to hold your tongue, you learn to hold your power. When you learn to listen more than you speak, you learn to understand more than you judge. When you learn to let others underestimate you, you learn to overestimate yourself in the ways that truly matter. This strategy transforms you from someone who needs to prove their worth to someone who simply embodies it. From someone who demands respect to someone who naturally commands it. From someone who fights for power to someone who power flows toward naturally. The fool you pretend to be becomes the mask that protects your true self while it grows. The silence you maintain becomes the space where your wisdom develops. The underestimation you endure becomes the foundation for your eventual recognition. But here's what's beautiful about this process. By the time you're ready to reveal yourself, you've become someone worth revealing. You've developed not just intelligence, but wisdom. Not just cunning, but character. Not just power, but purpose. You've learned that the greatest victory is not defeating others, but mastering yourself. That the highest form of intelligence is not outsmarting others, but understanding yourself. That the ultimate power is not controlling others, but choosing your own response to every situation. But there's something even deeper happening here. Something that will fundamentally change how you see every interaction for the rest of your life. Because once you understand this final piece, you'll never be the same person again. The metamorphosis. Here's what nobody tells you about living this way. You don't just change your strategy, you change your species. You evolve from someone who reacts to the world to someone who shapes it. From someone who gets pulled into drama to someone who remains untouchable above it all. Think about your life right now. How many times this week did you feel the need to defend yourself? How many times did you correct someone who was wrong? How many times did you feel frustrated because people didn't recognize your value? How many times did you waste energy on people who don't deserve a minute of your attention? Now imagine a version of yourself who never feels that way again. A version who watches the chaos around them with the calm detachment of a mountain watching a storm. A version who sees through every manipulation, every power play, every desperate attempt to get attention. This isn't about becoming cold or heartless. This is about becoming selective. When you stop trying to prove yourself to everyone, you start investing your energy only in people and situations that truly matter. When you stop needing validation from the masses, you start building deeper connections with the few who recognize your worth without explanation. You know what happens when you master this? You become magnetic. People are drawn to your calm confidence. They're attracted to your mysterious depth. They want to understand what you know that they don't. They want to access the peace that you carry. But here's the paradox. The less you need their attention, the more they want to give it. The less you chase their approval, the more they want to earn yours. The less you try to impress them, the more impressed they become. And this creates a phenomenon that most people never experience, a complete reversal of the power dynamic. Suddenly, you're not the one asking for opportunities. You're the one being asked. But this shift comes with a responsibility that will test everything you've learned. The responsibility of hidden power. When you reach this level of mastery, When people start coming to you instead of you going to them, you face a choice that will define your legacy. Because now you have something that most people spend their entire lives seeking: genuine influence over others' lives. People will start asking for your advice. They'll want your opinion on their decisions. They'll seek your approval for their choices. They'll look to you for guidance in their darkest moments. And in these moments, you'll understand what Machiavelli meant when he said that with great power comes great responsibility. You'll have the power to shape their thinking, to influence their decisions, to impact their futures. You could use this power to serve your own interests, to manipulate outcomes in your favor, to build a network of people who owe you favors. But the truly wise understand that this is a test. The universe is asking you, now that you have power, what kind of person will you be? Will you use it to lift others up or to keep them down? Will you use it to create value or to extract it? Will you use it to heal or to harm? This is where boys become men, where girls become women, where students become masters. This is where you discover whether you've truly understood Machiavelli's teachings or just learned to imitate them. Because the ultimate power is not the ability to control others, it's the ability to control yourself when you have the power to control others. It's the discipline to use your influence wisely, ethically, purposefully. It's the wisdom to know that true power serves something greater than itself. When you reach this level, you realize that every person who underestimated you, every person who dismissed you, every person who treated you as less than you are, they were all teachers. They were all preparing you for this moment when you would have to choose who you wanted to become. And this brings us to the most profound realization of all. Because when you look back at your journey, when you see how far you've come, you'll understand the deepest truth about human nature and your place in the world. The full circle. Here's what you'll discover when you reach the other side of this transformation. The people who underestimated you weren't your enemies. They were your greatest gifts. Every person who dismissed you, every person who talked down to you, every person who made you feel invisible, they were all unknowingly preparing you for greatness. They forced you to develop inner strength. They pushed you to find validation from within. They made you dig deeper, reach higher, become more than you ever thought possible. Without them, you might have remained comfortable in mediocrity. Without their doubt, you might never have discovered your true potential. This is the final lesson of Machiavellian wisdom. Your greatest opponents become your greatest teachers. Your deepest wounds become your greatest strengths. Your darkest moments become the foundation for your brightest light. When you truly understand this, something beautiful happens. You stop holding grudges. You stop needing revenge. You stop carrying the weight of past hurts. Because you realize that every person who tried to diminish you actually contributed to your growth. You begin to see the world differently. You understand that everyone is fighting their own battle, carrying their own pain, struggling with their own insecurities. The people who tried to make you feel small were often the people who felt smallest themselves. This doesn't mean you become naive or allow yourself to be mistreated. It means you operate from a place of strength and wisdom rather than fear and reactivity. You protect yourself not from anger, but from understanding. You set boundaries not from hurt, but from clarity. And in this space of understanding, you find something that most people never experience: true freedom. Freedom from the need to prove yourself. Freedom from the fear of being misunderstood. Freedom from the prison of other people's opinions. You become truly unstoppable not because you're invincible, but because you're untouchable. Not because you can't be hurt, but because you can't be diminished. Not because you're perfect, but because you're complete. Closing reflection. So the question isn't whether you should pretend to be stupid. The question is whether you're ready to become wise. Are you willing to trade the immediate gratification of being seen for the long-term satisfaction of being effective? Are you willing to give up the need to be right for the power to be influential? Are you willing to appear weak so that you can become truly strong? This isn't a strategy for everyone. It requires patience that most people don't have. It requires confidence that most people haven't developed. It requires wisdom that most people never seek. But for those who are ready, for those who understand that the greatest power is power over yourself, for those who know that the deepest influence comes from the deepest understanding, this is your path. The world needs people who can think beyond themselves, who can see beyond the moment, who can act beyond their ego. The world needs people who understand that true strength is quiet, that real power is patient, that genuine influence is invisible until it's undeniable. Final choice. The world is full of people trying to prove how smart they are. But the truly intelligent are already 3 steps ahead, moving in silence, building in secret, influencing from the shadows. They're not trying to convince anyone of their brilliance. They're too busy using it to change the world. Right now, someone is watching you, thinking they have you figured out. They see your quiet confidence as weakness. They mistake your thoughtful silence for confusion. They interpret your strategic patience as indecision. Let them. Because while they're busy underestimating you, you're busy becoming unstoppable. The fool's mask isn't just a strategy. It's a transformation. It's the difference between being smart and being wise, between having knowledge and having power, between being seen and being significant. If this resonates with you, if you recognize yourself in these words, if you feel called to this path of quiet power and invisible influence, then you're ready for the next level. Subscribe to this channel because we're just getting started. The deepest wisdom is yet to come, and it's only for those who understand that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let others think you're powerless. Your time in the shadows is preparation. Your time of being underestimated is education. Your time of silence is strengthening. And when your moment comes, and it will come, you'll be ready. The greatest masters were once seen as fools. The question isn't whether you'll be underestimated. The question is, what will you do with that underestimation? Remember, the fool's mask is waiting. Your transformation begins now.